Hey everybody, it's Craig from the University of Applied Research and Development and Drone Legends Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I'm delighted to have with us Deputy Chief of the LA City Fire Department, Richard Fields. Welcome and congratulations on the new role.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, great to have you here. I'd love for you to share a little bit of your background about how you got into the fire department.
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I'm actually in my 30th year in the fire service, and it was always, lived in a neighborhood in South Central Los Angeles that I remember as a young child, going to the neighborhood fire station. But it wasn't until I actually saw some high school friends of mine who were in a cadet program at the time, and I saw them leave, midday, in this uniform, and wonder what they were doing, and had the opportunity to ask and find out that there was a program to kind of an entry level and volunteer program for the fire service, and that immediately caught my attention and followed up and went and actually joined that program. And there were a few things that I thought that I was going to do, including playing football and, or working on computers or things like that. But I had a summer job, a couple summers in a row, where I worked construction. And it was the first time I realized how much I enjoyed, manual labor, that kind of work. Probably the first couple of times being in the fire station, in that kind of environment at my age at that point, it was all I wanted to do. Probably from that moment on, I knew that there was something about it that just appealed to me. And so I stayed a cadet and, continued in that process. And the beauty of it was it gave you that early exposure to what life in the fire station, what actual firefighters do day in and day out. And it was something that I just wanted to do. There was no question about that. And I stayed in that program until I was hired. I was 22 when I got hired into the fire service, and have loved every minute of it, ups and downs. And there have been certainly things that, some sad moments, some trying moments, but certainly some experiences that I don't think that I would have had it not been for, my career in the fire service. So very, very satisfied, very thankful for, this career. It's been fantastic.
Just before we talk about your role with drones and establishing that for your team and for your department, was this something that you have a family history of, like dad and your uncle were firefighters, or, people in the neighborhood were firefighters? Is it something like that?
No, it actually wasn't. I'm proud to say that I was the first, but now I have two brothers, both serving in the same fire department with me, and that's an
Wow.
amazing, privilege. And then now our fourth member of our family, a cousin of ours, first cousin, is now in his second year in the fire service. So, but prior to that, my only real exposure to the fire service, that there was one friend of the family who was a fire captain, and we knew him. And there was someone that we knew, an extended friend of the family, who was new to the fire service as well. But that was my only real exposure. And quite frankly, my first two times of exposure to anyone that looked like me in the fire service. You're the picture of a firefighter in any advertisement was not, anyone African American, at least
Right.
that I knew of. So it was really exciting to see someone that looked like me and that I actually knew, who was doing the job that eventually I wanted to do.
Wow, that's great. And so UAVs and drones, what
Hmm.
prompted you to become involved and really launch that and lead the way in the industry?
Quite fortunate, I have to admit. I've always been attracted to doing something outside of the box. I've been attracted to doing things a little bit better, each time. And Technology has always been something I've never been afraid of. I can't say that I'm well versed in technology, but always accepting of it, and I know that the marriage of technology and what I do just makes me better at my job. At the time, back in 2015, we were in a major reorganization of our department. And from the operations side, we separated the city into 4 geographic bureaus. And I had the privilege of working in the largest bureau, which is what we call the Operations Valley Bureau, which serves San Fernando Valley and the communities in it. And we were just looking for ways to kind of stake our flag, and really stand apart in the first year of operation, in whether it was technology innovations or how we engage with the public or our elected officials. We really wanted to stand apart. And one of the things that we thought about doing in improving or enhancing our service model was finding ways to be better at fire prevention, fire response, and then also post-incident analysis. And that was right about the time that drones were kind of coming into the public sector or the commercial sector. And we thought, well, what about using drones? And that's really how it started, just in a conversation. I knew nothing about drones at all, never owned one. And certainly my bosses did not either, but started to do a little research. And that kind of led to where we are. I could spend hours talking about our story, but it was I was able to put the idea down on paper and explain how it could benefit the fire service. And around the same time, our fire chief at the time, Ralph Terrazas, had gone to a convention of some kind, fire service type convention, and saw a mock-up of a drone on a command vehicle. And him being very open to technology, made that comment. And so was welcoming of the proposal. The very next week, I came in before the fire chief and all of his senior staff and presented drones in the fire service and how they could enhance our work, but more importantly, how they could support firefighters' safety by the biggest gap that we have in our service delivery is communication. We rely heavily on radio communication, but as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Right.
And so how well I communicate verbally, and then how the recipient processes what I'm telling them, is the only pathway to kind of make a decision or deploy resources. But when you add a picture to that, it allows you to do things better. And then also we realized that to get the information that we needed to make good decision makings on the fire ground, again, you have to understand what you're dealing with. That requires us putting people into that scenario, which is quite often very dangerous. So when we're looking at that necessity, we looked, okay, that's the problem we'd like to solve. And the drones were a natural fit to solve that piece of the equation, because now I can put a drone somewhere where I would normally put people.
Right.
Save that energy and effort and keep our firefighters safe, but also enhance the amount of information that I am able to give back to the incident commander, because not only do they have the verbal, now they have a visual and have a much better way, a more accurate way of validating what they're being told. So it was naturally a problem that we needed to solve, and it seemed like a very good tool to solve it. And then the progression after that was just simply, how do we make this happen? So providing real scenarios, good use case scenario, the justification for it, really being able to articulate the benefits of having the drone, and then providing a clear pathway for integrating that into what we do. And that was about a 2-year process. Before we ever flew a flight, it was really solidifying, that groundwork, or the ground level, solidifying why, how, and when we were going to use the drone before we ever took a flight.
So I get that it can enhance your ability to get information, and it can communicate it much more clearly, support the communication and the decision making that you're doing. Saving lives of firefighters, definitely important. Being able to spot where other people, citizens, might be as well, to direct your professionals to where they need to go. Could we have a look at some use cases of drones and the way that they've been used in real life scenarios, and really where the scale of drone use is right now across the fire department? Because I think things have really expanded. You were speaking to me the other week about that.
Yeah, it's great. I wish that I had some actual pictures to show you, and maybe we'd be able to do that at a different time or integrate those in. But we have some fantastic, again, the picture being worth 1,000 words. We are able to actually, I'll give you an example. Probably the most intense part of a wildland fire is while the fire is actually burning. The more, the closer it gets to homes or to residences, the most important thing is protecting human life. And so we typically will evacuate a residential area to prevent that fire from, damaging or hurting people. After that fire is extinguished, a really important part of the whole process is getting people back in their homes. We have a process of systematically evaluating, boots on the ground, people walking the entire area of burn to make sure that the fire is completely out and extinguished. Basically, that we have cold black earth, so there's no possibility of reignition or any of those things, so that we can say safely the fire's out there. We have containment lines around it, and it's safe for you to go back in your home. Depending on the acreage, that could take several days, and
Right.
A significant number of people to be able to search that out. Now we can put the drone in there using thermal imagers to be able to accurately identify where those, what we would call hot spots, are. Not only that, but we can fly the drones directly over our crews, and within the accuracy of a couple feet, direct them to the actual hotspot so they can extinguish it. That allows us to have our firefighters work far more efficiently with fewer people and fewer resources. And in the case of our first deployment in 2017, we were able to cut the rehousing process in half.
Wow.
Because we were able to complete that job in less time.
Wow.
Where it would take someone on the ground taking pictures of a particular area or walking that area, I can use a drone to fly that entire area, and in a matter of 10 minutes, I can take anywhere from 300 to 600 pictures, stitched out together in a mosaic that gives you a real life topographical picture of the entire area. It allows me to much more accurately map acreage, or the distance and space of the damage, and then to be able, with a lot more certainty, ensure the public that the fire is actually extinguished. There are a lot more examples of that, but that's just one, where it saves our firefighters, from and keeping them out of harm's way, but really as a force multiplier to allow us to better serve the public.
So across your department, your region, and across America, have drones been picked up with the same use cases and the same sort of scale that you're using them for your team?
They have been. In 2015 to 2017, the vast majority of drone use or drone interest was in law enforcement. And here in the United States, the there's always the question of, are you information gathering or are you surveilling? You know, to violating people's right to privacy, things like that.
Right.
So while there was a large interest and certainly a need for it in law enforcement, there wasn't much on fire and EMS side, in emergency medical services. Over that 2-year span, the use in fire service, increased, probably quadruple the number of people who were putting in applications to have a drone program. And as it expanded into state use and federal use, primarily in wildfire scenarios. And we've been fortunate as a department to really serve as an exemplar for a lot of departments out there, because it's really easy to, you can go off the shelf at your local hobby store and buy a drone. And you could have one person with a drone and say you have a drone program. But given that you are operating that drone or that UAS on behalf of the fire service, you don't want to become part of the problem. So we really promoted safe and professional use of the tool. And that required a lot of work in the forefront before you ever launched the drone. So we've been fortunate enough to really serve as an example for other fire services, other fire departments around the country, in how to develop and build a program and develop pilots so that they are operating as professional pilots. Our position is that you are a pilot putting an aircraft into what we call the national airspace, and you have to operate and behave as such. That's not a toy, and you're not a hobbyist. And so it was a shift in mindset when you're operating a drone on behalf of your fire service. So it's taken on quite the life of its own, and it's become a major part of most fire services across the country now.
That's awesome. Well, Richard, just as we wrap up, if someone's watching this, particularly a student in school who may be interested in pursuing this as a career with drones and using them for either emergency management or commercial purposes, what are some of the things you'd encourage them to do as training and preparation, learning experiences before they embark on their career?
All right. Well, yeah, first of all, I guess as a young 20-year-old, I would never imagined that I'd be involved with drones. Well, obviously they didn't exist back then. I would say that first, get into the fire service if that's truly what you have a passion for, because in the fire service, a world of opportunity can open up, especially in a department like mine, like Los Angeles City Fire Department. We have helicopters, boats, specialized hazardous materials resources, specialized water rescue resources. There's so many things that a person can do, working for the Los Angeles Fire Department or a large municipal fire department. And of course, that includes the opportunity to work with drones. There are a number of schools out there now that teach drone safety, drone flight, especially when connected to the fire service. There are a lot of industries now that, like our power and gas and water utility industries, that realize the value of using drones for inspection, for managing their infrastructure, where before they used to have to put people, and especially in remote areas, that can be dangerous. So the industry-wide, anything in the utilities, public safety, obviously the military, as well as private industry, a lot of filming is being done using drones, where they used to use helicopters or handheld cameras. The world of, is changing as a result of being able to simply attach a camera to a small and relatively economic, flying vehicle. So I would recommend, that don't limit yourself. I grew up
That's
in South
great.
Central Los Angeles, with a very tiny view of the world. And now I get to not only have been able to see the world as a result of the fire department, but I've been introduced to this world of drones that has allowed me to, kind of expand my horizons. So the really you're only limited by your ability to imagine. But there is a world of opportunity out there across several industries, where you as a drone operator can have a career, and can have a place in expanding, that profession, whatever it may be.
Fantastic. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you sharing some of your experiences. And for those watching you now on the recording, you'll see that we've got the link to Richard's LinkedIn profile, so you can connect with him directly there. And we do thank you, Richard, for the work that you've done for your service as well, and for sharing your wisdom with us and inspiring our young people as well here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, about the
Absolutely.
opportunities with drones and career prospects. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, I'm humbled by the opportunity. It was a real pleasure, and thank you very much.